Hi everybody, it's Christine with Ziedman Development, and today I'm excited to walk you through an executive overview of Importacular. So this video is not designed to teach you how to use Importacular. We do have other videos available in our training library for that purpose. But this video is designed to give you an idea of what this product does and how it can help you better integrate your data. So absolutely reach out to us if you have any questions afterwards. We're happy to point you to other areas where we may have more detail if that's what you need, or answer your questions as they come up. So without any further explanation, let's go ahead and get started. So you can see on my screen, I do have Importacular open. You access Importacular from the Plugins tab in Razor's Edge 7, and when you first open it, this is what you will see. I have already activated this product, and I do already have templates, so if you're opening this for the first time, it may have a few other differences. I also have access to all of our data sources, and some of these may or may not be available for you depending upon whether or not they're restricted by that company. So if you don't see all of the options that I have, please let us know. And if you have questions about any of our data sources, please let us know, and we're happy to point you to that information. So when you open this screen, you will first need to select your data source. You can work with files, so you can work with CSVs, or Excel files, including XLSX or XLS. You can also work with our data source partners, and many of these do allow you to access data in their system using an API connection. So for some of them, you need an API key. For others, you will need a user login and a password, things like that, because you do have to protect your data, of course, but they will allow you to connect to that data directly. So just so you can see a quick example of what that might look like, I'm going to show you our Classy Data Connector. So when you would click on the Classy data source, you can choose between donations or campaign registrations. And then when you choose that, then you can work with different types of donations or different campaigns. And then you can work with entries from specific dates and to specific dates. So this allows you to determine what information you're bringing over, and you don't have to create a spreadsheet. We have things similar to this for different areas. So whichever area that you're working with, absolutely we encourage you to look at that and see. But for the rest of this, I do want to work with a file just because I have some templates and things there that I want to show you. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my file. I'm going to click Start, and I'm going to use the search button here to locate my sample data file. I am working with an XLSX, so you can see I do have the option here to choose any of my tabs on that XLSX file. I'm going to work with my basic tab and click Retrieve, and that's going to load that data into Importacular so that I can work with it. Now, when you first open this, of course, you have to build a template. You can't import until you've built templates, but you do not have to build a new template every time. Once you have a template built, you can select the template and you can move forward. Or if you need to make an edit to that template, you can select your template, make an edit to that template, and then move forward. So a lot of our videos do walk through the process of building that template, but I do think it's important to say you do not have to build a new template every time you do your import. So I'm going to go ahead and select my template that I've already built. And just to show you what that looks like, we're going to click on the pencil here so that we can edit our existing template. So when you open your template, you can see we do have different tabs for the different areas in Importacular. Again, I have access to all of our destinations. Most people do not have access to all of these because you customize Importacular with just the areas that you need. So all organizations do have access to the constituent tab, the address tab, and the gift tab. Those are included with the free version. And then you can add to those tabs from there based on what areas you need to import data into. So if you need to look at some of those tabs, please let us know, and we're happy to help point you to information or answer your questions about what those different tabs do and how they work. That said, when you're building your mapping, you always start with a constituent, and that creates that constituent record in Razor's Edge. So I have a mapping here for my constituent. You can see that I've mapped things like a first name. I have worked with adding a gender and a surname. I have my primary addressee and my primary salutation, and several other areas here. So a lot of this is what you would see on Bio 1 and Bio 2. Just a point of reference, you can't always tell what fields are required because there's a green circle with a check mark there. You can see that I've selected default values for things like my addressee and salutation. It's because I want to work with my Razor's Edge formulas for addressee and salutation, and those formulas weren't in my spreadsheet. So if it's not in my spreadsheet, but I want to assign it, I can choose a default value. If it is in my spreadsheet and I want to assign it, then I would use a source field. You're never going to have a source field and a default value for the same field. It's always one or the other, but that's how you populate that Razor's Edge field within this template. So you're populating with a source field when you're pulling data directly from that source. So in this case, it's pulling it directly from my Excel file. Or I'm selecting a default value that I want to make true about everyone. However, sometimes there's a field in your source that can help you know what should go into Razor's Edge, but it doesn't exactly match. So for example, I want to populate gender in Razor's Edge, but I don't have gender in my spreadsheet. I do, however, have a title. So I've mapped the title to my gender field, and I'm working with my field settings and specifically my data transformations to translate those titles into Razor's Edge genders. So you can see I've worked with Miss to add the gender of female. Same with Ms. and Mrs. And then I've added the title of Mr. to add male. And then for everyone who doesn't have one of those titles, I have added it as an unknown. One other thing that I may want to do is uncheck the box here for existing constituents so that I'm only changing these genders on people we don't already have in Razor's Edge. That way, if we have Dr. John Smith in Razor's Edge with a gender of male, I don't want to override his gender of male with an unknown. So I'm going to go ahead and save that here. Another example of how we might want to use a field setting to change our data as it's coming into Razor's Edge is things like casing. So with our first name, you can see here that I have changed my casing to proper case. I don't like it when people type in my online forms in all uppercase or all lowercase. I like things to go into Razor's Edge in proper case. So this helps me fix that without me having to go through and make any changes to the spreadsheet. Let's go ahead and close that. So just like we can work with those fields and we can choose to update a specific field on a new constituent or on an existing or both, we can change casing, we can do some dynamic data transformation changes. We can also do some matching to data that's in Razor's Edge. So an example of that is I'm going to show you is with our constituent attribute. So I have a constituent attribute here for a favorite baseball team. And I'm working with the assumption that we know what their favorite team is. We know the description is the team name. We have a default value of our category for our favorite baseball team. But this is something that my fictitious organization has been doing for a while, and some people are already in Razor's Edge with this attribute. I don't want to add the exact same attribute to Razor's Edge if it's already there. So if I already know that someone is a New York Yankees fan, I don't want to add a second attribute giving me that same information. So what I can do is work with my area settings. So when we open the mapping, we see each of the fields, and we can work with each of those fields in a field setting. We can work with the entire mapping as an area setting. So I'm going to go to the end of my row here and just show you that I have an option here to determine what is a match and what to do with that match. So right now my match settings are saying that if it has the same category and description, then it's a match. So if it already says their favorite baseball team is the New York Yankees, it's a match. And then I've chosen in my settings here to say if it is a match, update it. If it's not a match, add the attribute. So if I already know that they're a New York Yankees fan, this is going to update that. So it'll add a new date or it'll add a new comment, but it's not going to add a new attribute. I could similarly choose the option at the bottom that says do not add a new attribute. And that means it's not going to change the date or the comment. It's just going to ignore it if it matches. Or I could choose the option above that that says always add new attribute. And then that would mean that I would have multiple instances of a favorite baseball team with the New York Yankees. These match settings exist in many areas across Importacular, and they do allow you to change that information as you're bringing it in. So you can choose, do you want to add multiple copies of this information, or do you want it to ignore it or update it as it comes in? go ahead and close that. Let's save and close our template. And I'd like to show you our review process a little bit. So we're going to select a control report, and we're going to limit this to just the first 6 rows. And we're going to go ahead and click continue. So at this point, Importacular is matching our data in our spreadsheet to our data in Razor's Edge. And you can see that it's worked with our criteria sets. And we have several records here that are set to update. We have one that's set to create, and we have one that we need to decide. So what that means is that our criteria sets weren't able to determine if Colton James is a new constituent or not. And our others have matched based on different information. So we can scroll to the right, we can see how good of a match we have, or we can see if it's a poor match. So in the case of Colton, it is a poor match. So let's look at Colton. And here we can see that we have 2 records that have the same address and the same last name as Colton, but no records that have Colton's first name. If we think that Colton is in fact in Razor's Edge, we can always click on Find Match Constituents and search for him. Or we could just determine that this is a new person and mark him as create. So we have the option to change these actions to take on a case-by-case basis. Or we could go back and we could adjust our criteria sets and look at that. We do have the options here to review all of the data that we have mapped to see what it's going to look like. So we can see our gifts here. We can see our address. We can look at our email address. We can look at our constituent. We can see our favorite baseball teams and all the different information here before we choose to validate. So you can make a lot of changes. You can update that information and you can work with it, changing the data as well as changing how we've matched to people in Razor's Edge, all before we validate and then all before we import. So I hope that this has been helpful for you in getting an idea of some of what you can do with Importacular. If you still have questions, please let us know. We're always happy to answer them. And if you'd like to get started, you can activate the free version today. Thank you so much for joining us and have a great day.